Welcome to Angel K TV.
Hi guys, welcome back to NJK TV. Today we're going to be talking about atoms and molecules. Well, most especially atoms though. We're also going to be talking about ions in the later end of the video, or near to the later end of the video. So let's start with what are atoms. So what are atoms? Well, atoms are basically the smallest part of any element, or the smallest part of an element that can exist. That's basically what atoms are. And do you know that atoms are actually that small to the point where you can't see it with a normal microscope? Yeah, you're only able to see it with an electron microscope. So imagine if you can't see it with a normal microscope, how do you expect to see it with your naked eye? It's interesting, right? Yeah, it's very interesting. Another interesting fact about atom is that everything on this earth, on the universe even, is made up of atoms. Every single thing in the universe, every single thing on this earth is made up of atoms. Why is that so? Well, because everything is made up of matter, right? Well, except energy, of course, but everything is made up of matter except energy, which means that everything is also made out of atoms, right? Yeah, it's actually really interesting if you get into a little bit about atoms. So, another interesting fact about atoms is that atoms cannot be subdivided, created, nor destroyed. However, they can be divided into smaller particles or smaller pieces, if you want to say. All right, so did you guys know that atoms have a central nucleus? And within that nucleus, we have protons, neutrons, and electrons. Well, we'll talk about electrons later, but within or inside the nucleus, basically, we have both protons and neutrons. So we have neutrons and protons within the nucleus. So another interesting thing is that protons are positively charged, while the neutrons are neutral. Okay, so what about the electrons? What kind of charge do they have, and where are they located? Well, the electrons are basically out. They're located outside of the nucleus and they are negatively charged. Now, what a lot of people think is that electrons basically kind of circle nucleus or the protons and the neutrons the way that, planets do to the sun. Well, that's actually not true. They come as a form of a wave, just waves, waves, right? That's what they come as a form of. They don't circle it, they're just there as waves. Okay, so let's talk about matter now. So we already know what matter is, right? Or do we know what matter is? So what is matter? So matter is anything that has weight and occupies space. Okay, guys, so let's head into an example of basically a drop of water. All right, guys, so do you know that a drop of water is made out of water molecules? Okay, so what are molecules then? Well, molecules are a group of atoms bound together. All right, so now let's talk about compounds. So, what are compounds? Well, compounds are basically two or more elements. They combine with each other. So, they have two or more elements with them. So, like for example, two hydrogen atoms can combine with one oxygen to make what? To make what? To make water. That's right. And why is that? Well, because one hydrogen atom is not stable enough. And plus, you can also see it here. We have two hydrogens. That's H2. The two there is just representing the two hydrogens. O, because there's just oxygen. So that O there is a singular oxygen, the one and only oxygen, that one alone. Okay, so now let's talk about atomicity. What is atomicity? Atomicity is the number of atoms in the molecule of an element. The C there is representing carbon, but the O there is representing oxygen. So what about this 2? Well, the 2 is representing the amount of molecules in the oxygen, or the oxygen molecule basically. Because remember, an oxygen has 2 oxygen molecules, right? And then the 8 there is basically the atomicity. Oxygen atomicity is 8, so oxygen has an atomicity of 8. Now, do we know why nonmetals plus metals bond together? And what kind of bond do they create? Yeah, they create ionic bonds, but why do they bond together? Nonmetals plus metals, they transfer. Remember? Because metals transfer the electrons, while nonmetals gain electrons. So this is kind of like a transferring bond. Okay, so what about nonmetals plus nonmetals? Okay, well, they share, right? Because, nonmetals, they were supposed to gain electrons from metals. But we have a nonmetal plus a nonmetal, which is equals to a covalent bond. So they're basically sharing electrons. All right, so in between the range of ions, we have something called the cations and the anions. But first, let's talk about ions. What are ions? Ions are basically charged particles. And how do we create an ion? Well, it's by losing or gaining electrons. Alright, so it has come to the end of this video, or close. But first, let's see the difference between a molecule and an atom. And then later, we're going to see the difference between an ion and an atom. Okay, so what's the difference between a molecule and an atom? Well, one difference, or a difference basically, is that molecules can exist independently, so they can exist on their own. Atoms, on the other hand, may or may not exist independently. So they can exist independently, while some can't exist independently. So that's basically kind of a difference between molecules and atoms. Like, for example, helium atom can exist independently, right? Yeah, helium can exist on their own because remember, it only has one oxygen molecule, right? So it can exist on their own. While oxygen cannot exist independently, because it has two oxygen molecules. It has two oxygen molecules. Sorry, I'm just trying to. It has two oxygen molecules, so it cannot exist independently. It cannot exist on their own, basically. Okay, so now let's talk about the difference between ions and atoms. The difference between ions and atoms is that ions basically have a charged particle. Ions are charged particles. Remember, we said ions, we form charged particles from losing or gaining electrons, and ions are charged particles. Atoms, on the other hand, are not charged particles. They're neutral, so they don't have any charge, no charge at all. And yeah, that is pretty much it for atoms. I hope you guys really did enjoy this video because, in my view, it was quite interesting learning about atoms and yeah, so it's quite interesting. But that's pretty much it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys, just enjoyed this video. As you can see, I tried doing something, new and different. It didn't work out though because I feel like I had to stop the recording because this mic kept on falling off. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I will definitely see you guys next time in my next video. I hope you guys learned something from atoms, and I also hope you guys found it really interesting how atoms and molecules and ions, how they work and how they differ from each other. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time in my next video. Bye, family. Do not forget to stay safe. Remember, I love y'all.